Hello and welcome to KiltedSwede. So what was it really like moving to Sweden? I don't mean the stuff I've already discussed, the adapting to the culture and the social side of things and all that. I mean the real life day-to-day stuff, the boring stuff. Because it is boring, it's dull, kind of depressing actually, and when I think back to it, I had some really dark periods where I had quite a lot of doubts about, have I done the right thing? Am I really going to be able to do this? And, what have I done? But it's something you have to go through. It's part of the process. And here I am on the other side, and, a more well-equipped person in terms of handling life than I was then. Certainly, I was completely lacking in experience of how to deal with that kind of situation. And I had a roof over my head. I had somewhere to live. I didn't have to worry about paying rent all the time, and which is nigh and impossible if you don't have a job. Even with a little bit of savings, it's not easy in an expensive country, which people warn me about. I remember one guy saying, "You move into Sweden, I hope you've got a lot of money saved up." He wasn't wrong. It's an expensive place to live. And therein lay the first challenge. Get a job, start earning money. A lot of people said to me, "It'll be fine, you speak English. You'll get, work in a bar or a restaurant or something like that. No problem." That's maybe all very well and good if you live in a place like Stockholm or Malmö or Göteborg, a big city where it's very international, which I did not. So that really wasn't an option, which I very quickly realised, because I did send applications away pretty much straight away to bars, restaurants and other places which I thought I might have been able to work in. But without being able to speak Swedish, forget it. Nobody even answered me. And here's the biggest problem. You can't do anything in Sweden without a personal number, or a national insurance number, social security number, whatever you want to call it. You have to have one of those to do anything here. Even buying a car. I've heard that people who buy cars in Sweden who don't live here need to get a temporary personal number. I can't remember what they call it, but it's because it needs to be written in that format on documentation, and it's only that format that is allowed. There is no way around it, so you have to have a temporary number in order to do that for the transaction to register, because that's the way the system's built up. So that got me in touch with Skatteverket. Okay, how do I go about getting a personal number? That's easy. You just need a job. Okay. That's proving difficult. Okay, otherwise you need to have healthcare, insurance. Well, that should be fine. I got that from the UK, right? Well, that's up to you to prove. Okay, let's prove it then. Now, I had done my homework in the UK before moving, and as far as I could see or understand, everything was fine, because it had been for many years or decades before for expats moving abroad with having healthcare, especially within the European Union, which the UK was still in then. Brexit? Really? I then discovered that the UK had ceased all healthcare for people moving abroad in around about July, August 2014, I think it was. And I had moved over after that. So I was stuffed up a certain creek without a paddle. I had to then get private health insurance. All right, that sounds expensive. So I started looking at private health insurance. It was expensive, but it wasn't, unobtainable. I mean, it was a lot of money. It was thousands of pounds or whatever for a year, but if you have to pay it, you have to pay it. But when I presented some policies, which I was thinking about getting to Skatteverket, they said they wouldn't work, because this is a real, even today, this just bemuses me, because it's so ludicrously stupid. And I'm not blaming any of the personnel or the staff I talk to, because it's not their fault. They're just doing their job, but it's the system. And this was the case. This was the answer I got from Skatteverket. You had to find a health insurance policy with no exceptions. All right, okay. So I looked and I looked and I looked and I looked. I even asked insurers and I phoned people and got in touch with people and asked them, is there such a policy? And you know what they all said? No. You know why? Have you ever seen an insurance policy with no exceptions? Because I haven't. It kind of is part of the game with insurance. There's always going to be something that happens that they're going to say, oh, we're not going to give you a cent because this happened. So you're on your own. It's understandable as well because they can't just pay out every single time regardless of what's happened. But with healthcare, I can understand the principle of it because you kind of need healthcare regardless of what happens. And these exceptions in the policies were, I can't remember what they were, but they weren't, in my eyes, unreasonable or ridiculous in terms of how an insurance policy tends to be built up, you know, because they're protecting their interests and their money as well. It wasn't ridiculous. It was stuff that I could understand, on principle at least. So I presented this to Skatteverket and they came back and still said no, because they were exceptions in a policy. And they wanted no exceptions. They wanted full 100% cover. Again, I understand that on paper, on the surface, but when it isn't available anywhere, how can they say that that's what you have to supply? Basically, it just made me really cheesed off with the whole system, and the whole thing left me completely deflated and pretty disappointed about my own country. Basically just leaving, hanging me out to dry. Well, you chose to leave, you know. Good luck. After having worked for over a decade, paying my taxes, paying my national insurance, and what did I get for it? Nothing. I found it extra ridiculous because we were still in the EU then, and if I'd lived in the UK even without working, I would have had healthcare. So I didn't see any difference in principle, but of course you're dealing with a different country with a different healthcare system and different rules. And now I had the uphill struggle of getting myself into the system of Skatteverket. So then began my quest to get a personal number, preferably get a job, because that's what I heard. As long as you get a job, you'll get a personal number like that. Because then, of course, you start paying your taxes and you start paying into the system, and that's understandable. So that was the goal. But that was proving extremely difficult without the language. And I think Skatteverket and numerous others recommended me going to Arbetsförmedlingen to try and get a job, you know, the job centre. They couldn't help me because I didn't have a personal number. I know, it's hilarious. So I went back to Skatteverket and explained this, and they said, well, we can't help you because you don't have a job. Rock, hard place. You couldn't make it up, I know. Let's get a job then, without speaking Swedish. I sent away so many applications, left, right and centre. And the thing I noticed quite quickly about sending away a lot of applications, the quality of every application goes down. Because every single application should be for that job in question. It takes time and care. You should write it well. If you send in a crap application, it's a crap application and you're probably not going to get an answer. And that's exactly what happened. But I was also writing them in English, which is automatically going to result in nothing. Again, if you don't live in one of the major main international cities. And what I did notice is when I did learn Swedish, and then I wrote my applications in Swedish, instantly I started getting answers. And then the better my Swedish got, and the better my CVs got, the better my applications got, the more answers I got. You get back what you give, you know, it's a two-way thing. You have to send something good to be able to get something good back. That's just how it works. Anyway, I did manage to get a job, little part-time administration job. Wasn't much, but it was something, and it was a job. And that really helped because that meant I got a personal number straight away. I was finally in the system. I had a job, I had a personal number, and the worst part was over. or so I thought. Because I'd already been through a fair amount of stress, worry, and kind of, sitting at home alone and panicking about what's going to happen? How is this all going to end up to get there, to get a job and a personal number? And in that time, even though I was trying to do something about it, to get something done, I was very thankful that I'd brought my Xbox 360 with me from Scotland, because actually wearing this t-shirt's good, because that was one of the games that got me through it. I had the entire orange box on Xbox. So gaming's good for some things, especially when you have a lot of time to kill and feeling pretty rubbish about life in general. It's good with some proper escapism to just switch off, and that really helped. Because also, it meant I was at home, I wasn't going out, and I didn't have to spend any money. But I do remember many days where I tried to keep my Monday to Friday relatively regular. I would try and get out of bed early and then get straight on the applications, send away as good CVs as I could, and do that for a few hours, and find some new jobs. And I had lists, of categories, and then right, these jobs I've applied for, these ones I'm going to apply for, and then these jobs I've just found, so look at them tomorrow. So I had my whole workday planned out. I had a structure there, and it actually helped, because you need some sort of, well, I did anyway, structure and order to, instead of just, sitting around all day and procrastinating, putting things off. Because I think I would have had real problems with procrastination if I hadn't had that structure. And that meant that once I had done my day's work or morning's work for sending away applications, I was playing the waiting game. I just had to wait for answers, and I didn't want to just keep sending them away, because I noticed quite quickly the longer I sat with writing CVs and sending away applications, again, the quality went down, because I lost focus. I wasn't as sharp, I wasn't as good, because I didn't have that drive and energy that you need to do it well. It's like anything, you need to rest in between. And that's why gaming really helped, because it gave me something to look forward to. It gave me escapism, which was, well, basically free, because it involved spending no money and just, being at home, and I could properly switch off and just charge my batteries. I did go out for walks as well, because I needed some fresh air and actually, sometimes emerge from the vampire cave. But eventually getting that job changed everything. It meant I had security and stability, and it meant it took a huge weight off my shoulders, and it was a big, big relief. But then I realized that I had an uphill struggle, and I really needed to learn the language. Something that I had been trying to do, but I also realized pretty quickly that when you're on your own trying to learn a language, even living in the country and surrounding yourself with it, takes a long time, because getting over the basic hurdles like grammar, sentence structure, and just, vocabulary, word knowledge, it's not something you can just fix yourself quickly, regardless of how many people say, oh, try our 10-day program or whatever. It never worked for me anyway. You need to properly learn the basics. You need the ground rules. You need a foundation before you can start building on it. And that's what I was missing. So yeah, working on the language. I started with a 6-week course at a place called Folkuniversitetet, which I paid for before I had the personal number. And that was great, because it gave me a real good grounding in grammar and a foundation, if you like, for the language. And then I got on to Swedish for Immigrants, SFE, Svenska för invandrare. And I started on course D, which is the highest level there. So I kind of hit the ground running, at least in terms of SFE. And I did that, and it really helped even more build on my foundation with grammar, sentence structure, and such things. And then I got into Komvux, which is like, adult education, or I guess you could call it college or something like that. But that was Swedish as a second language, and I did grundläggande there, which is, I guess you could say foundation course, and then level 1, 2, and 3. And Swedish as a second language, Svenska som andraspråk level 3, is comparable to Svenska level 3, Swedish level 3, which Swedes learn in school, which is the highest, but it's not the same. It's not graded that you're graded a lot more leniently. You're allowed certain mistakes that you wouldn't be in Svenska 3. So it's not the same thing, but comparatively speaking, it's very similar because it's the sort of level you can expect with a native speaker to be fluent and an immigrant like myself to be fluent. I'm never going to be as good as a native, unless perhaps I've lived here for decades and I've really put the work in. But, it's close enough. And after I did that and had been working in Sweden for a bit, I really noticed that it got so much easier the better my Swedish got, to the point where every CV I sent away just about got an answer. And then as soon as I got into like full-time work and everything, it was fine, because then I had some proper work experience to put down on my CV. But it's all the time in between. I mean, so I had a lot of downtime to think. Even though I was trying to keep myself busy and productive and occupied, there was a lot of time to just, be alone, because I didn't have a social circle either. I'd left all that behind. It took me a long time to get to know people and make friends here. So I was essentially on my own when other people I knew were all at work or away studying at university or whatever. So the weekends were usually okay, but through the week, Monday, Friday, that could be a lot of hours of alone with your thoughts. And that can be great, and it can be not so great. I had a lot of days where it really wasn't so great. And that was, I think, the first time I'd ever properly experienced, maybe not depression, but borderline. I mean, I did get pretty low at a couple of points. As I've said before, it does make you a stronger person after you've been through it. And it also, I think it would make it easier if I was to do it again, having been through it once. But it does make me it would make me very apprehensive to do it again, because I'm under no illusions as to how difficult it can be. And I've said that to people that have asked me since, how was it and would you recommend it? Absolutely. I'd recommend moving to a different country if you really want to do it, or it's somewhere that you really fancy trying or living for whatever reason. But do your homework and really be sure that you're ready. And I mean, I guess even if you're not ready, it's always good to challenge yourself, but just be fully aware of the reality of the situation, because the last thing you want is to go all in for something like that and then realize, uh-oh, I can't do this, and then having to go back if you really have to throw in the towel. Because that thought did cross my mind a couple of times, not in terms of I can't do this, I need to go back, but in terms of what if I can't do this and I have to go back? And I started to think that it was a strong possibility and it could well become a reality. So that can be very difficult to digest in the moment. When those thoughts creep into your head, when, as I said, you've got hours to yourself. And staying positive is very important, and it will get you through a lot. But I think the most important thing is having a support network. I'm very thankful I did, both back home in Scotland and here in Sweden. I wasn't alone, and I did have support, both financially and morally. So it really helps not being alone. It's always okay to ask for help. And it's very important to understand when you need help and then to reach out for it. Even though it's always satisfying doing something completely by yourself and like, I did that. I mean, ultimately that's what you do, because the only person who can do it is you. You have to want it, you have to do it, you have to put the work in and time and get through all those demons and dark days and, thoughts that creep in. You have to just remain positive and do it. I did it. But yeah, in essence, the personal number and getting a job, those are were the huge hurdles I had to get over, and certainly landmark moments in my experience here in Sweden. Well, all this talking about all of that, going through it again, I don't do it very often, but every time I do, I notice that I feel quite happy. afterwards. It's a box I kind of keep shut. I keep a lid on it, but it's not like it's Pandora's box or anything. But sometimes it's good to open it and just like, oh, what's in here? Oh yeah, I remember that. I prefer now. I'm a lot happier now. But that's what makes you who you are. These experiences. It's what makes you you. I always think it's important to remember such things, what you've been through, and talk about it. Hopefully, it might even help someone else. If sharing this helps somebody out there, then that's a positive as well. Otherwise, it's just good to talk about it. Well, anyway, I've probably spoken enough about this for now. So thanks for listening, and have a nice day.